Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are delighted to have you join us today for an engaging panel discussion on resolving the challenges of talent shortages and upskilling, the role of Tier 1 colleges in India. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to our panelists. Let me introduce our distinguished panelists. Our first guest, Mr. Amit Sharma, Vice President and Head of People and Culture at Volvo India, with a remarkable career spanning over 2 decades. A recipient of the esteemed Economic Times HR Leader of the Year award, Amit's impact resonates across various domains. Amit is known for fostering high-performing teams and driving M&A success, leaving an indelible mark on every organization he touches. Our second speaker, Ms. Loli Vadaseri, CHRO at Datamatics Business Solutions Limited, comes with an impressive 23 years career in strategic HR and organizational development. Her dedication to people, strategic mindset, organizational growth and development set her apart as a visionary leader. Lastly, let me introduce Mr. Debashish Majumdar, Head of HRBP and Rewards at Godrej Capital. He is the driving force behind the company's expansion in the financial services sector. His strategic vision has contributed to impressive employee headcount growth and industry recognition for Godrej Capital. Now, I would like to hand over the discussion to the moderators, Rishi and Isha. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Greeting to all the panelists. We're eagerly looking towards to gain your insight regarding the subject. Let's commerce with Mr. Amit. Sir, please provide us with your perspective on the hurdles presented by the scarcity of skilled individuals and the need for upskilling. Additionally, your thoughts on potential solutions that industry could undertake in collaboration with the MBA colleges to address these challenges.
Sure. So thanks for having me on the panel, and really pleasure to be with some of my good friends over here, Debashish as well as Lolly. Uh, so if I would really look at this entire topic, friends, I would really look at it as a part of a larger ecosystem of skill shortage which we are actually facing across the industry. And more so, it's kind of changing and it's very dynamic. So what skills which were there relevant a few years back, now they are no longer relevant as much, or the new skills have come up, and it's going to continuously evolve. The larger piece is how do we really go ahead and manage that, and what is the role which a good B school like Accelera is going to play on that. So the key thoughts which I was really looking at it, thinking when I was kind of putting together my ideas around it, one of the key pieces was that how can we really have that industry academia collaboration which is much beyond the traditional aspects of having internships and some hackathons or the case study competitions which typically have, and we tend to look at the skills from that standpoint, because that really doesn't really help that much, because what students learn in a college is basically dependent upon what professors teach them and what kind of environment they are having it over there. So that entire partnership which we have today with the academia actually has to move beyond, and I would call it, we have to move beyond just not the student internship, but we have to get into more a faculty internship. So that's something which we have also done in our organization. We're doing it for the last almost about 3 years, that we invite the faculty members of engineering colleges, B schools to our campus. They stay with us for about a month or so, and hence understand what is that really need which we have in the industry. What do we really have, what do we really want from the graduates which are coming out from these engineering colleges and B schools. And accordingly, when these professors go back, they are able to blend that knowledge much better in terms of their curriculum, in terms of their lectures, their assignments. And that really helps the students go beyond the traditional book, the curriculum which is there by the universities, to something which is much more practical. The second important piece I would say is that how can we have more and more industry aligned curriculum, which we essentially mean that industries actually part of curriculum design in most of in these good B schools. Now, in my experience, I have seen that that most of the good B schools, they do call industry experts as part of the academic council or a part of some kind of an advisory council. How much of that is really heard? I still have my question marks, because what I generally see is that in an organized in academia, they still tend to kind of go with the more traditional approaches. So I think that's an openness we need to have, where the industry experts should be very actively involved in shaping the curriculum, and that's when the skill shortage which we are looking at will get solved, because we know the best in terms of what we really want from the students who are graduating from schools like XLRI and all. So that's an important piece. The second critical piece, which I would say in terms of this entire topic, is around how can we have more research in our B schools. Somehow, if you really look at it, all the management research which we still study and what we studied in our B school days and what is, I'm sure, being taught today, is all a very predominantly Western management studies which have been done predominantly in US and these schools which are over there. Where is our body of knowledge which is relevant to our industry, which is relevant to our context, which is relevant to our sociology, which is relevant to our talent, our market? I don't find that much in B schools. The most of the time, what we still learn, the models, the research is still very westernized. I think we need to really focus here, because that's where the skill shortage will get addressed. Till the time we don't have research which is relevant to our market, our industry, our country, our background of students which are coming in, things will be very different, and we'll be simply importing external models over here, and then we are trying to implement those models without really looking at it from the relevance on that. So those are the two things which I would say. And the last piece which I would say is, I think we also need to get into a zone where the the certificates or the degrees, they come with a kind of a timestamp. I think it's, you can't really live with it that I have done an MBA maybe 25 years back and that is still relevant. The answer is no. What we learned 25 years back is fundamentally not relevant at all in today's world. The world have changed. How can we really have a scenario where we can continuously upgrade our certifications like we do in some of the other certifications which are there? We really need to every year earn some credits to make it relevant. So probably that's something which we really need to do, so that things remain relevant in the today's context.
Thank you so much, sir. We appreciate your insights, especially the point that you mentioned about the faculty internships. I think it's a very interesting point that not just students, but also faculty members need to learn more about the industry so that they can teach the students better. And also that B schools need to update their way of teaching. It should be more application-based learning that is relevant to our industry. So thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. My next question would be to Ms. Loli. Hello, ma'am.
Hi.
Hi. So as
Hi,
we know,
thank you for having me. Yeah.
So as we know, more than half of the top Indian companies have a sex ratio of 10:1, which is extremely disbalanced, and only 3.6% of women hold executive positions. So could you kindly share your thoughts on India's talent shortage, notably gender imbalance in women's leadership representation?
Okay, very interesting question. And hi, Amit. Hi, Debashish. And good evening to all of you. So thank you for having me over. When we talk about skill shortages in general, the reality is for the last almost 2.5 decades that I've been working, this has been an age-old story, right? There's always a gap between academia and industry. However, in the recent years, I think it's more pronounced because of multiplicity of issues, because the pace at which technology and innovation and all of which is happening, it's important for the B schools to also keep aligned to what's happening in the real world. Coming to the perspective of the gender inequality, I would say that, across most of the organizations that I've worked with, that's definitely been one of my core responsibilities, and this is something I've taken upon myself to ensure that we have more and more women into the workforce, right? I've largely worked with IT education or the services sector. And yes, while there is an imbalance, the reality is so specific to your question when it comes to leadership positions. I remember while reading this book of Indira Nooyi, right? One of the most powerful women in the world, when she was holding her position at PepsiCo and being in the most developed country of the United States. The reality is she's very beautifully articulated in the book that at times when, especially for women, okay, sometimes you can't have it all. So it is always a constant, effort to make sure that you're balancing both ways. So work-life balance, and more than work-life balance, I would say in terms of between managing home and managing work is definitely not easy, right? And I'm sure my co-panelists would also agree with me on this, that because women are expected to shoulder, unfortunately in India, and again, this is no offense to all the gentlemen we have out here, but majority of the household responsibilities does end up falling on the women. So how can organizations create a space where people have the flexibility? I'll tell you all a very interesting anecdote. So during COVID, and just after COVID, so we decided to move to a hybrid model somewhere a year and a half back, right? Somewhere start of 2022, where we go to office twice a week and 3 days people operate out of homes. There are some operational processes where it's completely work from home because of the way the nature of the work is, right? But there are actually women who come back saying, you know what, we want to come back to work. We prefer being in office because it's much tougher being at home, because you're not just managing everything else at home, but, you have sometimes people say, oh, so what if she's on a job, but, she can manage everything else. So sometimes women are expected to be superwomen, which realistically does end up taking a toll on people. Why are there fewer women in leadership positions is also because I think one of the things come from the point of view of there are not many role models, right? There are not many people that you can emulate. So it does end up becoming that there are sometimes fewer people. Many of them decide to take a backseat, when they, get married, especially when kids come along, and they think it's, why does one need to be so aspirational? But the reality is in today's day and age, and there are many organizations, I take pride in saying that we have a male to female gender ratio of about 55:45, right? So 55 men to 45 women. So I think it's probably industry-wise, I think definitely a very, very good ratio. And one of the things we are targeting this year is to at least make sure we reach a 50-50. So I in terms of it is going to be a bit of an uphill task even in the coming years, primarily because more and more organizations need to be able to give that kind of flexibility. So one of the best practices that we implemented long back is the minute we know that a lady has, she's going the family way, her KPIs are reduced to by about 30-40%, right? No questions asked. Because and that's what I remember 8 years back, so there were some leaders who said, oh, but this is going to impact business. I said, no, nothing will impact the business. We can still make it happen. Let's be sensitive. So I think it's about having a whole lot of the best practices at work to ensure how we can have women have that space to give their best. And trust me, my experience has shown you can, and I know I may sound a little biased when I say this, but by and large, the ladies end up becoming many a time so much more efficient in a whole lot of things that they do. So it's about getting that space, and somebody will, if somebody believes in them. So it's important to have that kind of an organizational system and a culture where you're not just given wings, and then there are people who have done extremely well. So why women have, why there are fewer positions, in fact, I think in Indira Nooyi's book, again, she has articulated it well to say that many a times women also take a backseat themselves, right? Sometimes it may not always be the circumstance. They just think that, okay, you know what, I just need to focus on certain priorities. So yeah, I think it's constantly a choice one needs to make.
Right. Thank you so much, ma'am. especially for the fact emphasizing that historically there always been a gap between the demand and supply in skilled workforce. And it's high time and responsibility of B schools as well to balance it.
I'll just
I
add
request.
here one more thing,
Yes,
to
sir.
what you said. Here, there is actually not a question of demand and supply gap when it comes to gender. The demand supply is pretty much still balanced. If you go to our B schools, at least at B school level, you find almost balanced these days numbers of men, women. Actually, if I really look at this screen also, maybe about 30-35% women are at least, or maybe 40% women would at least be there. The problem happens once they are in the workforce, and that's when, as Lolly said, other responsibilities start taking over and women start taking a bit of a backseat from being aspirational. And sometimes,
Right.
and what we have also observed in our organization, and what generally called as industry as imposter syndrome, which is like, even if I am competent, but I may not be ready to take on that job. And sometimes everybody doesn't raise the hand, if the job is available, I am available. Please consider me. It's very well established research fact that if a man is maybe 70% fit for the job, he will still say I'm eligible. And a woman is even 90% fit for the job, she'll still say, oh, but I still have the 10% gap. Maybe should I apply? Should I not apply? I think that's somewhere I would also put the responsibility on the women workforce also, to be aspirational and move ahead, and don't hold yourself back, because if you will yourself will hold yourself back, how will the system support you? The system has to support when you yourself are also willing to take that step. And from an organizational standpoint, as much as possible, make policies gender neutral. That helps, because the moment you have gender neutral policies, there's the discrimination goes away. If you have maternity leave, give an equal amount of paternity leave also helps, because then people say, okay, then the man is also going to be out for a long period of time. So suddenly the bias around against the women, or suddenly she'll go on away for 6 months, will tend to go away. So try to think innovatively as much as possible. Try to have as much as possible gender neutral approaches, which will take away the bias towards the women, and you will actually see things starting to improve.
Thank you so much, sir, for adding on to it. Now I request Mr. Debashish. Hello, sir. For
Hi,
your opening statement.
hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir, you are.
Hello.
Yes,
What
sir.
was the
Please.
question?
So just your insights about the topic we're in discussion on.
No, so I think it's just before starting off, I think it's an honor and a privilege to be back at my alma mater as part of this panel, and hope everyone in your families are doing well and keeping safe. I think purely, if the question is about the gender diversity piece, while I think a lot of direction has been given, I'm a part of Godrej Capital, and we've been in business for about less than 3 years. We got the chance to build this organization bottom up. And as a result, what we did it slightly differently. When you hire for a new organization, you hire top to bottom. And hence, we focused on gender diversity at the top management level. Due to which what happened is we ended up getting about a 50% gender diversity, which is industry leading in India, at the top management level. And then that's the top management followed by senior management, middle management, and junior management. And hence it becomes easier to get buy-in of top management because you have as many, in the boardroom. And as a result, while sometimes at a later point we realize it becomes challenging to get as many women in frontline roles, where the going is a bit difficult in terms of ways of working, and we are trying to work on that. But a lot of the legacy issues got solved for us because we built that gender diversity in top down. I think for a steady state organization as comparison, it would be slightly more difficult, and it's a journey. But again, it's about creating that talent pipeline towards those higher order roles or senior roles. And once you have that, then you get a lot of good buy-in, and you get a good number of role models, so to speak. So I think that would be my 2 bits on this.
Thank you so much, sir. To proceed, Mr. Amit, sir, my following question is directed towards you. As the post-COVID era reshapes the business landscape, understanding the evolving skill set gaps becomes pivotal for organizations striving to align their talent acquisition strategies with dynamic industry demands. In line with this, could you tell us a little about what specific skill set gaps have become more prominent in the evolving business landscape due to the pandemic? And how can organizations accurately identify these gaps and align their talent acquisition strategies to address the issues effectively?
So one fundamental shift which has brought in this entire post-pandemic, as you talked about, is the entire digital skills. I think that's something which is fundamental change which has happened. Whatever was being done non-digitally is being done digitally. I can tell you, pre-pandemic, I have never seen such panel discussions happening on in a virtual conferences. All such events also used to happen physically. We used to travel to the V schools or engineering colleges to have such conversations with the students. Today, it's become so easy. All of us are at different places, and we are able to kind of connect and do that. So, to me, that's the fundamental shift which has made, is more about digital literacy, more about how are you able to blend the digital with what you're doing. So that's fundamental shift which has happened even in the management schools. Some B schools used to still call it MA in something 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 in the management sciences, or all of that subject was still classified as arts commerce subjects. But I think now we are moving on to more techno commercial subjects, or the nomenclatures, rather than just having arts commerce nomenclature. Second important piece, I think, with the advent of the entire transition towards digital and IT, is the entire thing around cybersecurity and data analytics. So these are the key skills which have come in now, which were not that prevalent. As things move online, the more and more cybersecurity becomes critical. Now, we honestly face so many phishing attacks as an organization, and we continuously try to educate our employees around how to deal with phishing attacks, how to identify the right, that's about what is a fake mail, or what is a phishing mail versus what's a mail which is really coming from the right sources. Multiple training programs getting attended, asking employees to go through those sessions to be able to identify all these cyber frauds which are happening. As much as this is happening in the personal lives of people, it's equally happening in the corporate organizations, where people will just we have seen somebody will use a fake email ID coming from a vendor and say, hey, this is my new bank account, can you change the bank account to the vendor master? And if you make that change, the money will go to somebody else and not to the right vendor. And they will do it in such a professional manner that it's really hard to distinguish between what's a phishing mail versus what's a real mail. So cybersecurity has become a very critical piece as we move towards a digital piece, as physical security was in the era of non-digital. Then this entire element of, I would say, data science and data analytics. Today, the world is about it. We say data is the new oil. That's the currency of the future. Today, everywhere, people are just looking for data, because that's is really giving you the power. Whosoever has the data has the power today, because they have the insights, they have the knowledge, they have the trends, they have the patterns, and then it becomes really easy for anybody having who has those kind of patterns available with them, to take certain actions which are very targeted, very specific, and can be very potent in terms of its efficacy. So those are the critical ones. On the same side, when we look at it, we also need to understand that it also has brought in some other elements on the table, and one of them I would call is emotional intelligence on the softer skills side. As things are moving ahead, and as we are working more and more remotely, we are working with teams which are scattered across. So these days the social connect in the post-COVID world is not as much as it used to be the pre-COVID world, because of the flexibility, work from home, work from anywhere aspect. How do you really build the social connects around with your team, with your manager, with the managers, with your peers? So and that requires a very different kind of emotional intelligence. So that's an important element going forward, which will be a currency of people who will be successful versus people who will not be successful. Then some of the other pieces which I also observe in terms of the key skills which are there. One is even managing remote workforce. That's not easy, by the way. It's very easy when the person is sitting next to you, because the fact that every day you look at the person's body language. When the person is walking in, the person is feeling good, happy, sad. Is there something bothering or not? It's just directly on the face of it. You can understand that. When somebody is remote and you hardly see the person, through the day, maybe you'll have some calls. Sometimes the video is on, sometimes the video is not on. But even when the video is on, it's a small, maybe 1.5 inch by a 1 inch module on the screen. It's difficult to understand, what's going ahead, what's going in the minds of your employees. So ability to manage a remote workforce which is not there with you, but how can you be sensitive to them? How can you collaborate with them? How can, at a peer level, people can collaborate? I think those are important elements, or key skills which are going to be there in future. And the last one, I would call it the crisis management. We have seen what COVID has done. And we would continue to see disruptions. COVID was one, but after that, we had this evergreen ship getting stuck in Suez, and the entire world supply chain was, completely destabilized. And then the Ukraine war happened, and then again, suddenly things changed. The factories which were there in Russia got closed. You had to then have alternate supply chains. The Russian markets were no longer there for organizations, especially who were dependent highly over there. So we have been moving from one crisis to another. So ability to deal with an uncertain situation and dealing with it successfully, that's a skill which is going to be for the future. Now, how do you identify them? How do you go ahead with them? I think one of the key aspects which organizations need to focus on is their I would go back to the classical approach of workforce planning. I think organizations need to very clearly chalk it out, make their workforce plans in terms of, what is the kind of talent they need for the future? What do they have that? Do they not have that? Do they want to build it, or they want to buy it? If they want to buy it, where will they buy it from? If they want to build it, how will they build it? All of that. So it's a classical approach, which still, in my view, still works the best. One needs to conduct, a thorough workforce planning, which is looking at the future environmental scenario or the context, as well as the organization's own growth plans and own focus areas which they want to focus on, and meshing it together to create a plan. That's the only way. There is no other shortcut to that, is what I would say, Shah.
Right. Thank you, sir. It was truly motivational to hear that you gave a positive look to the pandemic as well. And also, when you said that data is the new oil, our batch could really relate to your concepts. As yesterday itself, we were having a discussion whether data is the new water or the new oil. So really, thank you for that. So moving forward on the same lines, ma'am, question for you. Amid the shifting world pandemics, could you elaborate on the nuisance balance between hiring and potential and existing skill sets? How can HR leaders foster a culture of continuous learning to bridge the gap between the current and desired employee competencies? Thank you.
Okay, so I think in the war for talent, right? So if you ask me, typically, again, somebody who's been there, and I'm sure my co-panelists would say the same, when you go out in the market and look for skill sets, so whether it's hiring from B schools or even bilateral hires, it will be very, very rare that you get somebody who's like, 100% fit. Reality of the market situation, right? I mean, probably 10% of the positions you can say you're close to a 80 or 90% fit. Otherwise, in 90% of the positions that we fill, so whether it's, hiring from B schools or hiring from the market, there is always a gap, right? Now, how does one, so to your question, Rishi, if you ask me personally, I believe in hiring for attitude and in the potential that the person displays, rather than just hiring him for certain skill sets. Yes, certain jobs does need, you need to have, because, typically you'll have the functional manager who will come and say that if the person doesn't have these skill sets, how will I get him to deliver? But my personal take has always been, and this is what we try to, sort of, because I've been in the services space throughout. So it's all about being in the people business, and it's people who make all the difference. If you have the person with the right attitude, the right, mindset to work, and I just want to add to some of the skill sets that Amit just shared. I think today's day and age, and even the coming future, is largely going to entail that we need people who come with the mindset to be agile and adaptable. I think that's so key in today's day and age. And the future is going to be all the more, as VUCA as it can get and continue to be more VUCA. So it's about how can we ensure that people come with an agile and adaptable mindset, willing to accept that complexity is the order of the day, right? It is going to be complex and get more complex in the future. So how much am I taking to? And if you ask me, the single most important attribute to make any individual successful, whether in an individual contributor role or in a leadership role, is his or her ability to take unconditional responsibility. That's so key, because unless the individual is willing to take that responsibility and say that, I own it and I'm going to make this is the outcome that I want out of it, there will really not be a case where the individual can be successful. So again, the whole thing of being very creative, right? Having a creative mindset, a problem-solving approach. One is, somebody can say, and like I think at the start of this, like Amit said, B schools have a certain way of the curriculum. Some of the B schools, of course, you would have more updated curriculum, but it's also about how much are you getting the real life experiences back into the school, so that from the industry, how much of the real life. So how many master classes, let's say, are people from the industry conducting, where they can share real life experiences of success, of possible failures, and the learnings from those failures, right? So in terms of hiring, I think, again, coming back to the question, it's potentially to see that, do they have the potential to scale up? Many a times you see that people are able to scale up to a certain extent when you just hire for the skills. So in my view, it is more important to hire for potential, because then the person can take on more, go up the hierarchy, can take on, could move even laterally across. So yeah, I think my vote goes for hiring somebody with the right attitude and the willingness to be there and make it happen.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm sure it'll be very helpful for the entire batch to learn about the more important skills, such as the ability to take unconditional responsibilities and just being more accountable for the tasks that you are given at work, and having the mindset to be agile and adaptable, willing to accept the complexities. Thank you so much, ma'am. Now progressing ahead, my next question is for you, sir, Mr. Debashish. Considering the rapid pace of technological advancement, how do organizations balance seeking specialized skills and nurturing a versatile workforce? What role do you think does collaboration between HR and learning and development teams play in this pursuit?
Thanks for the question. I think a couple of things here. I think I'll agree that organizations need to be agile. A lot of times what happens is that, and you've worked before as professionals, so you would know that typically an organization strategy would change at least once or twice a year. But how often have you seen that there's a new structure, org structure or org design, or need for a new skills repository that comes along, right? People fear that change, and essentially that the same thing that we create continues for 3 to 5 years, if not more. But essentially, then what happens is that your strategy is changing, whereas your skill set, your repository, your structure is not aligned to it, right? And hence, what happens is that this is exactly what creates the skills gap. If they were very aligned, then one would talk to the other, and as a result, your skills repository would be extremely updated, right? And once it's updated, you exactly know what skills repositories you need as an organization, and then you see what is your existing workforce providing in terms of which skills is the organization very strong at, which skills the organization needs to build and which it needs to buy. So I think from that element it becomes extremely clear. The second point on this is the fact that if you are to and typically how it happens is in any steady state kind of business that you're running, typically you would want to build those skills over a point of time, even if you buy one off, right? what happens is you would want the person to come in and not just deliver their own role, but also teach a wider audience so that that org capability can be developed. And on the buy side, if you're typically trying to create a new vertical or a new product or a category, let's say an FMCG firm, in the personal care category, trying to create a let's say a foods category, or let's say a BFSI organization in the secured lending space, trying to create an unsecured lending or a business loan kind of category. Then what happens is then you exactly need to go out in the market and buy those skills. But then you need to be extremely sharp in what you are asking for. So, for example, in these cases, you would be asking for design thinking, strategy, innovation, and hence, are you really testing for that during your assessment process? Because if you're not, then you'll possibly hire someone quite wrongly. And then, suddenly on day one, you'll expect the person to deliver, which they will not be able to. I think and this particularly from a startup view, a lot of times what happens in the build journey is that when you're starting up something and you want to go ahead and buy that talent, you should understand that when you're going ahead and wanting to buy that talent should have that kind of experience to build that. A lot of times I've seen that if you're not very specific, you'll end up buying talent which has seen that particular product or category in the steady state journey and not in the build phase. So essentially, a few things that we see is that what is the kind of when is disturbance. What we see is where is the when has that product or category been built in that organization, and is that overlapping with the person's CV at what point they have actually worked in that particular category or product, right? So that means that they would have really been in the team which has really built the product ground up, and not entered at that at a steady state level, right? Because more often than not, when they join us in from a steady state kind of a product vertical, they will not be able to deliver on building it. And I think that is a lot of places where such good intention kind of hires fail. And these are learnings that we have had. So I think that would be my 2 cents on this.
Thank you, sir, for shedding some light on the importance of upgrading your skill sets with time and job requirements to excel in professional life. Thank you so much. My next question is for you, Amit sir. Amidst the changing nature of the skills, Tier 1 colleges can redefine their role by forging symbolic relationships with industries, infusing lifelong learning into their ethos, and cultivating graduate equipments with knowledge and the ability to adapt and excel in the ever evolving professional life. So, as employers invest significantly in upscaling with workforce, how can Tier 1 colleges strategically collaborate with industries to ensure the curriculum remains aligned with the changing demand of the job market? And also, how can companies collaborate with Tier 1 colleges to create future ready and dynamic workforce?
So, Rishi, as I mentioned earlier, one of the key aspects is that how can there be a much more closer collaboration which is symbiotic on both sides, and is there a willingness to learn on both sides? That's an important element to me. The biggest shaping factor for a student when they are in B school are the professors. They are the ones who are teaching them about the new concepts, teaching them about the practicalities through the case studies you are learning through them. So how do we really ensure that their skills are relevant? And that to me is the most critical piece. So the industry should be open to have professors with us coming here, spending time, understanding what the industry needs, because that will really help them in terms of their knowledge, and hence when they go back, they are able to provide a workforce to the.
I think Amit's got stuck.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Amit sir, can you hear us? Okay, I think maybe while he tries to get back with his connection, ma'am, we'll move forward with your question. So in light of the skills currency becoming a driving force, what role does mentorship and cross-functional exposure play in upskilling initiatives? How can organizations create an environment where employees are not only consumers of knowledge, but also active contributors?
Right. Thank you, Isha. So I think one of the ways that, when we talk about cross-functional learning experiences, these things vary depending on the size of the organization. With a startup, I can tell you that when you join a startup, you are in a way operating like a mini CEO. Okay, you get exposure to every single function, and you become a kind of an all-rounder. And having worked with startups, I can say that in the early years, that could be one of the most uplifting experiences. You get exposed to every single thing, right? When you work with mid-sized organizations, depending on how much the individual shows initiative, see, a lot comes from people who show initiative, people who show that, they are eager to learn and they get all those opportunities. I can tell you that. Again, when it comes to very large organizations, because they have a certain structure, mobility between multiple functions may become a bit of a constraint, right? But there are, of course, organizations who give you those kind of opportunities to sort of cross-train between. So, for example, we have had people who've been in some of the operational functions and moved into sales, or into some of the other corporate functions and said that, they want to move to the business side. So those kind of mobility is always possible. But I think, in fact, here I would say it's important for the individual also to believe in themselves that they can make that transition, right? So I know of cases of people who have moved from marketing to get into HR, or from HR to get into, let's say, sales. So any of these is possible. And I think organizations will, by and large, be more than willing to invest in people, right? Provided they show that kind of enthusiasm or that willingness to be taking that on. So, so I do think that from an organizational setup context, it is largely, so would there be, so to your point on the mentoring side of it, right? I think mentoring is, again, a very, very crucial aspect of making sure that people are getting aligned and are able to sort of adapt to the culture of the organization. So one of the things which really determines a person's longevity in the company is how well he or she is able to adapt to the culture of the company, right? In addition to some of the things which like I mentioned to the earlier question, I think one thing which is, again, very crucial is when that individual is able to take on that responsibility that, okay, this is my career and I need to take on that path for myself, rather than just leaving it to, okay, let it be decided by my manager or let HR decide it. You've got to, and that's where I again come to the point of my favorite thing of saying it's about taking that ownership and responsibility. I'm the captain of my ship and the master of my fate. So I decide for myself how I want to. And then once you decide for it, then everything else in a way does get aligned. Then the size of the company doesn't matter. There are people who have very, very fast track career growths, primarily because they've been in the driver's seat. So while mentoring, there are also some people who go, and companies do have a policy of having, mentors, coaches. So many corporates today are even, especially the large ones, while of course it may not be across the board, but they do have coaches, right? Executive coaches who are provided to sort of help a person reach to his or her potential. Mentoring is, of course, again, a very common phenomenon in many organizations. But I think it all depends on how much the individual is willing to be like the sponge and willing to absorb as much as he or she can learn from those situations and learn from the shared experiences.
Great. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your different perspective. Devji sir, our next question is for you.
Sure.
Since we are talking about the hybrid model, welcome back, sir.
Sorry, is that Don't know what happened, but it just got thrown out of the system of the call.
No issues. Yeah. So, Debashira, our next question is for you. With remote and hybrid work models gaining prominence, how can employers ensure equal access to upskilling opportunities for in-house and remote employees? And could you also share some examples that successful strategies that transcend geographical constraints?
Right. Thanks for the question. Unfortunately, I think as COVID has ebbed in India, at least, I've found that more organizations are comfortable with hybrid and not so much with remote. And as a result, and within that category, I've found two types of organization. One is where you go to office few days of the week, and your other days you're working from home, but in the same city as the office is located. There are a few other organizations which say that, okay, hybrid would mean that a few days in office, but the other days you can work from anywhere in India. And I've seen both models work. In terms of learning interventions, purely the delivery piece, all days in office versus hybrid is not a challenge actually, because you can simply call everyone on a particular day to office, and the challenge is largely with remote teams. And that's not very prevalent in India, but apart from a few roles in tech and analytics, so that's a microcosm, so to speak. A kind of trend that I am seeing develop post-COVID, in fact, that's quite dominant, is the fact that tier 2 cities, are now getting a lot of job opportunities, and hence, there's a reduction in pace of migration that happens due to jobs. And the standard of living of the average standard of living is improving. So I think that is a trend that I'm seeing. In terms of what are the kind of learnings that are available, one is of course upskilling could be, which is absolute mandatory, right? Like Amit spoke of cybersecurity. There's something on legal, industrial, org wide for your particular function or department that you're supposed to know, so that goes on regularly. The other should be sharply defined about as a career vision for yourself, right? So for example, what is you own your career as an employee, and as a result, what is your career vision in the short and the medium term, right? And once that is clear, then what are the development areas for yourself in either the current role or the next role, which has been identified for you, right? Or at least you have some idea. And hence, what happens is it becomes extremely clear that whatever is an intersection point of employee need and organization need is something that needs to be catered to, right? So, wild example: if I am an organization in BFSI and you say that I want to learn French, may not be an overlap, right? And as a result, it becomes important to identify that overlap and how you build into the succession planning of the organization, right? The other way to look at it is you can imagine that any organization will have critical roles and non-critical roles, right? And similarly, in terms of people, you will have high potential people and not so high potential people, right? Now, once you've identified that, the idea is to have a very huge overlap, almost 100% of critical roles and high potential employees. You cannot have high potential, you cannot identify someone as high potential, but they are doing a non-critical role, right? Then essentially you're overpaying for that resource, right? Or maybe you've misclassified that resource or that employee as high potential, whereas actually they are doing a non-critical role and doing a good job of it, but maybe that's not the definition of high potential employee. So I think these are the various ways in which to classify, right? And I think on the delivery of learning piece, I think in the age of social media, our attention spans are very small, and hence people have shifted to bite-sized learning. And within bite-sized learning, when you speak of, if you have a remote audience, and you have an in-person audience, essentially it's important to understand each person's need and maybe give an option for, let's say, audio learning versus text learning. Some people learn better, audio visually, and some people learn better by text. And hence, giving that option, and that's easily done because a lot of technology is there in the market. Gives a lot of freedom to the person to learn in their fashion. And I think the old school way of, how do you assess, right? Whether that skill has been developed remains the same, which is that you do a pre-assessment, you do some e-learning, you do some classroom learning, you do a post-assessment, you assess that skill competence level, through some interviews, 3 or 6 months down the line. That's like Kirkpatrick. I mean, that has stood the test of time of how you know what the skill repository is or the skill level is of any person. So I think that is the way, a lot of upskilling happens. On this point, I think MBA is a very important part of upskilling, right? So to that extent, MBA is a milestone, and but I think the only difference is that, like in our parents' age, what used to happen is you used to, start and retire in the same job or doing a similar job. Essentially, that's not going to happen now. So as a result, the business cycles are changing very often. So typically, what I've read is maybe 6 to 8 years is the cycle, which is that every 6 to 8 years you have to change your job, or I'm not talking about the employer, but the kind of job that you're doing, right? So either you do it or you're forced to do it, either way. But I'm just saying that the cycles are changing quite fast, and that actually follows from the economic or business cycle that's also changing quite fast. So I think it's important that while don't get comfortable, right, in what you're doing. We always develop an expertise, but what happens is also important to continue to do a job rotation and or some projects and explore that what are the other things that I can do. And at least if something is at 90% proficiency level, I maybe not focus on going to 100% in that, but maybe focus on other skills which you can at least take from 0 to 30. So you can actually white base a lot of your skills. I think that could help. So yeah.
Thank you, sir. I think, yeah, it's important. Like, I totally agree. It's important to, understand the way your employees prefer to learn and accordingly design your courses and give them the freedom to learn in their choice of method, be it audio or text. And it is important to find the intersection point as well. So thank you. Thank you for your insights. Amit, sir, would you like to complete your question? Hello, Amit, sir. I think we've lost sir again. We would now like to open the forum, open the forum for questions from the batch. It would be a pleasure if ma'am and sir, if you all could address those questions.
Guys, any question? We'll just take 1 or 2 questions. We have a hard stop at 5:40. Yeah. Yes. Ajay, please start.
Hello, am I audible? First of all, thank
Ajay?
you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Am I audible?
Yeah, Jay, you're audible. Go ahead.
Sure. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, man, for your valuable time and insightful session. Actually, we try to bridge the gap between the academic industry requirements and academic curriculum by industry sessions like today. So what my question revolves around is about the technology. That is, given the inception of such rapid technology innovations like IoT 5.0, do you think the academic students are apt in handling the challenges of such fast innovations? And do we think that academia is able to bridge that gap of such fast evolving technology that industry requires right now?
Okay. Okay, I'll look at attempting at responding to that question. So, Ajay, whether it is Industry 4.0 or the upcoming Industry 5.0, right? The reality is that there will always be, I think it would be unfair to completely expect the academia to be completely, in step with whatever is happening, because the pace of change is so fast right now, right? So, but the reality is today, in today's day and age, there are tons of opportunities to upgrade one's skills, right? there are so many platforms, so many learning opportunities to really upgrade one's skills. So technology is advancing, of course, at a very fast pace. The beauty of Industry 5.0 is going to be really that, this is where the human element is also going to be very key. It's going to be a very, very human-centric and working in collaboration with robots and all the technological advances that we see. Is going to also have environment. I mean, the whole ESG space is going to get a lot of focus because we all realize that, over several generations now, I think there has been so much of, I think all of us, not just as human beings, as corporates, I think the Mother Earth is something which has been plundered in probably worst ways that one could think of. So everything that is going to happen and coming forward is going to have this as a theme. And I do think that, rather than again putting the pressure, and I know sometimes it's very easy for us from the industry to say, I wish we get ready-made resources just coming in who could just be plug and play, right? That sometimes may or may not happen or doesn't happen in most cases. But I think as long as an individual has that constantly learning mindset, I think we live in a day and age where we've got to be willing to learn till probably the last day of our lives, right? So as long as we have that mindset that you're willing to be a constant learner, continuous learning, continuous improvement, and accept the fact that change is the only constant, there is no reason that any technological changes or anything that comes even now or in the future should have any kind of a constraint with us. I hope that addresses.
Yes, ma'am. It completely addresses. As you also informed that the right attitude with the mindset of learning will actually garner that and help us in the future upcoming skills, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Arun, you may please go ahead.
Hi. Thank you. First of all, quite an intriguing session. Words to remember. Definitely, we'll keep this close to our heart. My question is along the same lines as Ajay did ask. It's about technology itself. So, with the rapid change in technology and the disruptive technologies like AI, cloud, generative AI, all these use cases coming in, do you think there is a certain advantage that, students from the technical backgrounds might hold over business school students today? And if so, what are the industry implications of that? Or any sort of insight, you guys come with a big insight into what really are you hiring and who really does hold the advantage. So what's your take on this?
Right, I'll take an attempt at this. So I think, thanks for the question. A couple of insights on this, that yes, I mean, in the past 1 or 2 years, even data would suggest that technical or technology-led roles, be it on the generalist side or on the specialist side, actually, is more in demand. But classically, this has happened where, you'll have a particular span of years where it's the age of the specialist, and a span of years where it's the age of the generalist. So, I think we'll have to reskill or upskill ourselves in order to react to that after every change cycle. So typically, what will happen is, what the future of work typically says is that about 45% of jobs that exist as of today, obviously new jobs will be invented, but as of today, whatever that exists, 45% of them will not be there. And it also says that, let's say 60% of jobs, will have their job description shrunk to 70%. So 30% of that job description will go away. Which is not a cause to worry. It's just to have a learning mindset and say that what else can I do to fill up the 30% that's possibly been automated, or some virtual assistant or a bot is working on it, right? So I think a lot of work is going on in this sphere, which are also called cobots, which is that work is not as neatly substituted by a machine. As we think or imagine it to be. It's a bit messy, and hence only part of the job goes away or gets automated, right? And the rest is actually aided by the machine, right? And hence, can we add certain skills so that we can create a proper job description for ourselves even in the future? I think that is the sweet spot to be in. And it's not about, technology or non-technology. Even if I explain in the form of economics, imagine that technology roles or technical roles are high in demand today. Everyone will go to a technical school or a, very data science kind of a school, either in tech or analytics. And hence you'll have so many people, where the supply will increase to such levels that again, the demand will come down, right? And hence again, the price in the market will lower. So it's always going to be a supply demand thing. The idea for you is not to follow that too much, but be aware of it, that it's happening, and continue to place yourselves or skill yourselves in areas which are upcoming, or are already in vogue. I think that's the way to go. Hope I was able to answer that question.
I just want to just add to what Debashish just said, since, you talked about, and since we are talking to all B school grads, the concern is, so you have some friends who are on the technical side, so, you sometimes think, did I take the right course of career course by choosing to be in a B school? The reality is, at the end of the day, to even manage all the technical folks, you still need the B school guys to really be there and, sort of this. So I think the people skills, and therefore, again, like I said, the human centricity part is going to be very, very crucial. And that's where, you guys definitely would need to have all those skills of having to see how you can understand. So technology is always one of the means, it's not the end, right? At the end of the day, the whole outcome, the end is what is really crucial. And I think that's where B school grads come into place to make sure that, you are driving that. So I think you guys have nothing to really worry about, irrespective of the demand for the technical resources.
Right. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, ma'am, for addressing the queries of our inquisitive batch and widening our scope and horizon today. Now I request Tenu to take over for the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Rishi, and thank you all our panelists. I, on behalf of the PGDM GM batch 23-24, extend our sincere gratitude to all of you, especially Amit, Loli, and Debashish sir. Amit's insights spotlighted industry academia collaboration, gender neutral policies, and data significance. Loli highlighted work-life balance challenges, advocating for attitude-based recruitment and adaptability in the VUCA world. Debashish emphasized organizational agility, skill alignment, and Tier 2 city opportunities. Collectively, their perspectives call for bridging academia-industry gaps, fostering gender inclusivity, and navigating dynamic workplaces. These valuable insights have ignited fresh ideas and set a transformative course for a more inclusive and innovative professional landscape. The perspectives you have shared today will guide us as we prepare to re-enter the workforce and tackle these challenges head-on. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us over.
Yeah, bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am.
All the best.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Yes, sir.
Bye.